And I'm very, very happy now that we can have a good conversation because this is a man I've been wanting to get to know much better. He is Dr. Angel Alvarez. He was a professor at the Central Venezuela
Yeah,
University
yeah.
and headed a department in political theory. His background is he has a degree, a PhD from Notre Dame in peace research, peace studies, or something, right? Which is sort of my bag. So we have a lot in common. So, good morning, Dr. Alvarez. How are
Good
you?
morning, Mika. How are you?
Good. It seems that we're both here in Toronto, although you teach at the University of Ottawa now,
Yes, I'm teaching a class on political communications in
which
Ottawa.
is what we're going to talk about today.
Mm,
And you do it by Zoom, I gather,
Yeah,
as it these days.
yeah. We're having a weekly meetings on Zoom.
So, tell me what you cover in a course like that.
Well, basically, the first part of the class is focused on the how what are the relationship between the government as a political actor in a democracy with mass media and citizens in the context of the general theories of political communication. So we go over those traditional theories that started with the study of the public opinion at the beginning of the 20th century, and then we address uh, all the theory about the two-step of communication developing basically for electoral campaign, but also useful in between elections. Then we focus on the theory of the agenda setting theory, which is probably the most uh, mm, the more powerful theoretical approach to study the role of the traditional legacy media, but also the new electronic platforms and media. So and then we study the relation between the government as an agent with other political actors like political parties, interest groups, international actors, other governments, but also not non-governmental international actors, and obviously the domestic citizens, but also the relationship between the different levels of government. In the case of Canada, obviously, the provincial government and then the federal government, which is not always easy to coordinate actions, particularly in crisis situation like this one with the COVID-19, where there are different agendas and different priorities. So it's challenging to coordinate the process of communication. And we study also the values that should be in the mm, actions of a government as a communication agent, which are basically transparency, accountability, a democratic relation with the citizens, and efficacy. And then we finish our class with the process of branding the government, and particularly branding the country instead of the government, I will say. So we study the process of branding of Canada. That is a diplomatic strategy to promote Canada as a country, a Canadian interest of private and public
The
branding
slogan,
techniques.
Canada is back, which
Yeah,
Trudeau
yeah,
announced with
yeah,
great enthusiasm when he was first elected. Canada is back.
yeah, yeah,
Well, that was certainly an effort to brand, to change the brand.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I suppose one of the the real criteria for differentiating an authoritarian regime from a democratic regime would be the nature of the communication between the citizens and the government officials.
Absolutely. That's a crucial issue because if we have to define democracy in a practical way, we always will have to rely on the concepts of communication. The concept of public opinion is the substantial part, if not the most important part, of the democratic process. So I will say that democracy is basically a communication process. In the case of the authoritarian government, I wouldn't say that it's a communication process. It is basically an information process. So the government is an agent that broadcasts information and try to shape people's minds and preferences based on that communication that the government monopolized, and also try to get information from the public in order to control people's behavior. So if democracy is communication, I would say that authoritarianism is basically the monopoly of information.
I'm thinking of things going on in the world today. I suppose we all are, things going on in the US. And also I'm thinking of what's happening right now in Russia with Navalny going home and all of this stuff about clearly the regime is, it's a wonderful game going on there, where they throw him in jail after trying to poison him. And then they try to convince the public that, of course, they didn't really try to poison him. Something else happened. I don't know what they claim. But then, so he shows a picture of this enormous palace. Well, how are they going to sweep that under the rug? How do they manage to manipulate images and even photos and reports? My God, it is so interesting to me to try to get inside the minds of people who are trying to do all kinds of what I think of as crooked communication strategies to try to manipulate public opinion and suppress certain kinds of knowledge.
I will say that the political propaganda and manipulation of information have been always in politics, even in democratic politics. But in the case of democratic government, there is a dialect, a bidirectional relationship between citizens and governments. So in the case of democratic settings, you can even identify attempts from the government to manipulate public opinion, to put pressure on public opinion. Social media, electronic companies have a strong influence on the public, and they collect a large amount of information, and they use that information to sell those as their products. So they get information for enough about our preferences, about our the sites that we visit, the word that we use, the product that we buy, and they sell that information to other corporations and to politicians. So this is present in democratic societies and capitalist society. The difference is that in democratic societies, users have more opportunity to organize and to communicate and to create contents and share those contents in a kind of personal broadcasting process. So we as an individual, we can have our social media accounts, and we can use these platforms, and we can have some voice, and we can even organize with other people in trying to improve the level of democracy among us and in our relation with the government. And this is not the case of the authoritarian regimes like in Russia, where or even China, in China is even worse. The current government of China has a system, as you know, of social scoring. So the government can assign some kind of point regarding based on your behavior in social medias and in the electronic platforms in general. So you can get even discount for traveling or some benefits if you are a good citizen, and you are punished if you are not a good citizen from the point of view of the government.
So you've mentioned, of course, there are corporations that are doing it, that people are very upset about having information collected about their tastes and the preferences. Personally, most of that doesn't bother me a bit. I find it quite convenient that I can, if I remember I was trying to buy a pair of winter boots online. Well, for 6 months or a year after I did that search for winter boots, there were ads popping up on my the side of the screen trying to sell me winter boots. Well, and if I order books from Amazon, they give me a list of suggested books that they think I might like, and they are really good. They can predict very well the exact things that I think, yeah, that's very interesting. I might buy that. So that doesn't somehow bother me, but it certainly seems to bother a lot of people that all this information is collected about our tastes and our former boyfriends or whatever, the relationships that we've had and so on. But on the other hand, I mean, it's saying too much. It's giving us too much credit to say, well, we live in a democracy and our government doesn't do stuff to us the way the Chinese government does. Because if you listen to what Snowden revealed, the U.S. government, and I don't know about Canada, but we're part of the Five Eyes, aren't we? That there is a lot of collection of information about people that we don't know about and probably wouldn't authorize at all.
Yes, absolutely. I think this is a big problem. This is a big problem. And even political parties may have access to this information if they have enough money to pay for that. As Norberto Bobbio said a long time ago when he was criticizing the model of liberal democracy at the end of the 20th century.
Who did
and
you
I would say that nowadays, Norberto Bobbio is an Italian political scientist.
Okay.
And is very influential in the theory of democracy.
I don't think I know that person.
Yeah, Bobbio, his last name is Bobbio. Bobbio.
Yeah, okay. I guess I've heard of his name, but I don't know a thing about him. And he's a theorist.
Yeah, I think he is pretty much well known in Europe and in Latin America. So the government knows and the big corporation know a lot about us. Our life is no longer private.
Yeah.
And we know a little bit, just a little bit, about what the governments and the big corporations are doing, even with our life and our information.
Right. Well, of course, the freer the press, the more likely it is that we will know what is going on in the government. Although there's nothing to force the government to tell the truth.
Exactly.
Guess.
But I think that these technologies will evolve. I am not pessimistic. They have been evolving, and I will say that we are nowadays even better than we were a few decades ago, particularly at the beginning of this era of electronic democracy. And I think that in the future, as long as we as citizens organize and participate, we will be able to be more efficient and to hold politicians accountable regarding the information that they have about us.
Why do you think it's going to get better? You mean technologically the possibilities are there for more transparency,
Yeah.
or that we will start demanding more transparency. Those are two different.
But I will say that both things. So they are connected. We should demand more transparency. We should organize to be more efficient in challenging in channeling our demands. But at the same time, the technology is able nowadays to give you, as a citizen, more information than in the past. I'm gonna mention an example. It is possible nowadays to have bots controlled by citizens that can, for instance, see when the government modify, amend, or correct some public information on some places, like for instance the data sets or some public platforms like Wikipedia. So we can know when the government is editing and what kind of edition they made. So if they change some information, if they change some substantial data, we as a citizens can be automatically informed if we follow those bots that are privately created and are connected to Facebook or particularly to Twitter. So we get a tweet telling us, the agency X from this particular area of the government in this country is editing this information. If we are interested in this particular data, for instance, environment or history or security, national security, we can follow that information and make some track and trace what amend was made and what will be the effect of this edition. So I think even nowadays we have the instrument, and this instrument can evolve even more. And I am not telling you that we are gonna reach the perfect world. Never. it will never happen. But there is a kind of a dynamic in which there are progress and improvements in the democratic process.
I wish I could believe just what you said. I think you're telling the truth about what is technologically possible, but you sound optimistic, and I am bitterly pessimistic because simply the fact that it is possible to lie to people officially, the government can lie and lie and lie and get away with it, and half or more of the population will believe it, and they will act on it. And look at what has just happened in the US. This riot took place because the government, the president of the United States, stands up and tells people, go, wreck the Congress. And basically he instigated it. And it was based on 4 years or even 5, even before he was a candidate. Lying constantly, and people don't challenge it. So the fact that people are so willing to believe baloney, that obvious lies that could be found out, they could find out the truth technologically. It's great to know that there are methods of testing or checking the truth, but people don't do it, and they believe on the basis of what they want to believe.
Yeah, I am not totally optimistic, but we can see that historically there are elements for us to suppose that we can be better. Let's suppose, for instance, what will happen in Germany in 1933 if the government would have made the same. They did it. And the German citizens were unable to check what the government said, and they were unable to react efficiently. So Trump was able to lie. He repeated these lies many times. Half of the population was believe him and follow him, in a very loyal way. But the other half organize themselves and react, and were able to check this other half and the authoritarian behavior of Donald Trump. So I am not telling you that you know, we live in a rose garden. We don't live in a rose garden. So it is a challenging, it's demanding, it demands political involvement, it demands information. But I will say that today we are in a better position to confront and to check authoritarian trends in our societies than we were in the past. For instance, even nowadays in Canada, due to what happened in the US, the Conservative Party had to clarify that they will not support a fascist, racist, far right movements in the party.
Okay.
So it is a kind of reaction, of a domestic reaction of what happened in the US, but also the reaction of the Canadian people to what happened in the US. So the Conservative Party was probably able to track what's happening in the Canadian public opinion, I guess, basically through the social media. And they had to anticipate a damage control message telling people, we will not support something like Proud Boys in the right politics in Canada.
I would probably be more likely to accept your optimistic version of the technology than I would about any optimism about social psychology and the dynamics of human interaction.
Mhm.
Because, you know, everything that I have seen worries me, not just about how much the government can or a political party can manipulate its techniques to influence me and to get me to change my opinion in a certain way. That's bad enough. But I think I used to pin all my hopes on giving more power to NGOs, to civil society,
Mhm.
that we would bring, that if we would just empower, like some of the groups, peace groups that we belong to, if we would give more opportunity
Mhm.
for them to have more influence in government, this would solve a lot of problems. And I guess I still want to believe that,
Mhm.
but I have, you know, when you look at how NGOs work, there's no rule of law in an NGO.
Mhm.
There's no, there are no systems of appeal. There's no, you know, a system of verification or a system of proving things. It can be an NGO, a civil society group, is all about emotion and personal relationships and loyalties and identity and all of this stuff that's just about human interactions. And I have seen NGOs that have made terrible decisions just on the basis of this, what used to be called groupthink. Remember Janus back in the 70s? Irving Janus had this study of groupthink where he would show, for example, in Kennedy's cabinet, there, I think he showed that, first of all, the Bay of Pigs thing was, they blundered into this stupid policy of supporting this Bay of Pigs invasion because the members of the cabinet or his advisory council all liked each other and wanted to be approved by each other. And so nobody would question what anybody else would say. And they built up this fantasy about what was going to happen, and nobody was critical of it, or, you know, said, no, I think this is dangerous. And then he learned later, when it came to the Cuban Missile Crisis, he learned to break them up into subgroups and have them, because he knew that there'd be a dynamic within each of the subgroups, but maybe some of them would not agree with each other. And so he had to learn ways of keeping this group dynamic from, building up into an ideology or a conviction or a belief that was just not sufficiently testing reality. And I've seen that in NGOs in ways that make me think, even in government, you would have some recourse if somebody wants to sack you or tell lies about you or something. You have some procedures that you can appeal to try to get evidence, and you have courts have rules of evidence and how you're supposed to present information and so on. And that's not true if you have just organizations in which human dynamics take over. So I think something like that is going on, for example, in the U.S. with this tribalism. This extreme, the people have taken sides and are loyal to a particular political party or a political ethnic group or a political or a gender or some identity that they have become individually loyal to, and that those sort of personal loyalties take priority over testing evidence. So yes, you could find out what is true by technologically. You could do a search of what the court records have shown or whatever, or what the voting record disclosed. You can find out factually, but that's not what people are doing. People are basing their opinions on personal or psychological or emotional or social psychological loyalties, and I don't know how to counter that. How in the world can we get over that?
Well, I think it's difficult because we human beings are, we are a mixture between rationality and emotionality. So we are emotional human beings and we are rational human beings, and we are emotional in some areas and rational in others. I mean, I think it is impossible. But I will say that even though are some group of people that sometimes are the majority, and sometimes are only a vocal minority. I mean, and the government had a lot of information about what we do as individuals. But nonetheless, we can try to, and I think that nowadays we are more efficient. We can more efficiently try to put pressure on the government and on and get some level of transparency. I wouldn't say that we will have in and never in the short run a complete transparency and complete accountability from the government. I just arguing that we are currently in a better position than we were a few decades ago, and this is the result of some technologies that at the same time have this dynamic. So they open opportunities, but they also put us in a more vulnerable position. So there is a kind of trade-off in this dynamic.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I think I would pin more of my hopes on putting more institutional procedures in place to make sure that facts are checked and appeals are possible, and people have to get vetted for their background and so on before they're appointed to particular roles, etc. I'd like to be in your class, sitting like a fly on the wall, listening to the conversation. What do the students?
You are more than welcome.
Do the students raise the kinds of objections and concerns that I've been throwing at you?
Absolutely, yeah. In many cases, some of them are more enthusiastic than I in the regarding the social media, but some others have serious questions and reactions and concerns about the level of the democratic participation that we can achieve through these new technologies in the case of government communications. Yes, there is a debate, and this is probably the reason why this class for me is interesting.
One
Because,
question I would wonder about the students, or about public opinion in general. You know, Edward Snowden revealed so much about the government's misuse of information or collection of information about citizens and so on. He and of course this WikiLeaks guy, I don't necessarily think they belong in the same category, because I think maybe there's culpability on one side that I wouldn't attribute to the other, but you know, this disclosure of government secrets, some of my friends are you know, want take the side that the government needs privacy and secrecy, and we must prosecute anybody who reveals any truth that's just classified information. And on the other hand, I have other friends who say that this is the lifeblood of democracy, is having people like whistleblowers who tell the truth, and that the government doesn't want known. What if you were raising the question in your class? What do most of your students think about this issue?
I would say that the majority of them will agree with those who claim that the government should be transparent, and the hackers have the right to reveal government secrets to the public. I would say that will be the majority, the majoritarian opinion in my class, at least. And I tend to think that this will be also the general opinion of the public. I have no survey to prove my claim, but this is my feeling. This is my reaction. I think most of us would like to have a government accountable in terms of the information that the government is managing. But at the same time, if we confront the problem of national security, which is a very sensitive issue, and you tell people, well, the government needs some kind of a secret information in order to preserve peace and security of citizen life and properties, and avoid, for instance, terrorist attack and radical groups to, create organized riots or create very important political protests in a country. I would say that most of the people will say at the same time, well, yeah, the government should have to prevent that. So my conclusion is that there is not a clear answer. So we have to have institutions, as you say, to prevent the government for being, an authoritarian ruler who have everything in secret and all information about us, kind of a global monitor about citizens' behavior and a way of thinking. But at the same time, we should agree also that the government needs some level of leverage in order to prevent social and political catastrophes.
Yeah, a very actually current decision of mine is whether I want to get WhatsApp, because people in other countries use it a lot more. And I think people, for example, in Russia often use WhatsApp because it is, I believe, it's not possible to hack it or
it's
to
encrypted. Yes, encrypted.
It's encrypted, and even the government can't get into it. So you could really have a secret conversation there. And I don't know whether I want that or not, because, for example, if the government wanted to track down these or anticipate these rioters, these right-wing, Proud Boys and all these guys who just rioted in the Congress, I would want them to be able to, get a court order allowing them to listen in to if they have a strong case that there's reason to believe so and so is up to no good. I would want them to be able to get in and listen. On the other hand, I'm not sure, when it comes to my friends who are maybe dissidents in an authoritarian country, I'm blessing them for having a WhatsApp because they theoretically at least can communicate more freely. So I don't even have my own mind made up.
And I would say that it's impossible to have a final position regarding this issue. But at the end of the day, as you said, procedures for government actions and institutions and rules are crucial. So in this particular case, I am just speculating. I am not an expert on this particular time of platform, but in general terms, I will say that the government can use the usual procedure to deal with this. So the government can have informants, can infiltrate those groups, and can use some kind of judicial support, a warrant, a judicial order, in order to follow those groups and have a kind of secret agents that participate on those groups and provide information. So it happened in the past without the social medias. It can happen in the present too, to also using the social media. So in the past, many governments use those kind of informants in private meetings, in people's house and restaurants and whatever. And in many cases, many governments were able to prevent violent attacks and the danger behavior of criminal organizations and political radical organizations. They can do the same nowadays if we followed a procedure with some legal basis.
Yeah. And I mean, any one of these methods can be used for good or bad, I guess.
Yeah.
Because you're talking about allowing people to infiltrate a group,
Yeah.
Okay. But on the other hand, just think back to East Germany and the Stasi.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, people, a woman finds that she's been married to a guy who was assigned to marry her just so he could spy on her. This happened a lot. I mean, this use of neighbors to do harm. Or collect information about others. It can be good or it can be bad.
Yeah, but as I told you at the beginning of our conversation, the main difference that I make in my class is that difference between the communication and information. In a democracy, we have communication among us as citizens, between us and the government and other organizations, institutions. In an authoritarian setting, there is only information, and information is a commodity and can be sold. I use the information that you give me, and I can get some kind of benefit if I provide those information to somebody else who is interested, particularly the government. So I don't think that we can make a total fair comparison between the process of communication, of political communication in a democracy, with the process of information flows in an authoritarian regime. So
at least you and I agree on our politics enough that we both we're not on opposite sides on those terms.
No, not at all.
So I think I'm more pessimistic than you are, but it's nice and refreshing to encounter somebody who has so much hope for. This has been fun. Thank you, Angel. It's been fun, and let's continue this another time. Okay.
Of course, I'm more than willing. It was a great time.
Good. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.